Hello! Welcome or welcome back. Today we are discussing Soulsmith by Will White, the second installment in his very popular Cradle series. In a video about the previous installment in this series, I talked about how Cradle is both very unique to me, but also very familiar. It's unique in the way that I've never read a progression fantasy before. I didn't know what to expect, but it's familiar in the way that Cradle follows the exact same story structure as many of the shonen anime I grew up watching. Shonen anime like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, or Bleach. So in that respect, the story structure will be very familiar to many readers. One observation that many people make after concluding Soulsmith, and it's an observation that I also made, it is Lindon is the least interesting character in the narrative. He's the least interesting, least powerful character in the story. And he's kind of boring, especially when compared to the very colorful, interesting, compelling cast of characters in Soulsmith. The previous installment, Unsouled, was very much a two-person show, but we're introduced to about 6 or 7 more characters in the narrative that are all very interesting. Lindon is a little vanilla, and he is incredibly weak compared to all the people around him in this story. But one thing I found very humorous and interesting is how Lindon finds a way to ingratiate himself to all the powerful characters around him because he knows they can unalive him like that. So he does his best to stay on their good side. And it's kind of cool to watch him kind of break down the walls of these very powerful, titanous characters because he's just a lowly, very weak sacred artist in a land of titans. But perhaps my favorite thing about Soulsmith is we finally have a mentor character. And this mentor character comes with one of my favorite tropes that is very prevalent in shonen anime. And it is this. Mentor basically tries to kill student the entire story. So one trope that's very prevalent in anime, especially shonen anime, is our protagonist encounters a very overpowered mentor figure. The mentor figure is like, we're very low on time, so we're going to have to risk your life. Sink or swim. Are you going to rise to a new heights, or are you going to die? What are you destined to be? So essentially the mentor puts the protagonist in a dire situation, and the protagonist has to rise to the occasion or die. Luckily, and this isn't much of a spoiler because there's 10 more installments of the series, Lindon has some pretty serious and substantial plot armor. The plot armor is very prevalent. He gets away with so many things. Lindon should have already died probably dozens of times already in the series, and we're only 2 books in. But that doesn't bug me too much, because plot armor in shonen anime is very common, very prevalent. It's almost a trope at this point, and that's okay, because Lindon is destined for great things. Cradle, I don't think the main narrative of Cradle, the main plot, the main story is going to surprise me very much. Lindon's going to grow in power with every installment of the series. He's going to encounter friends and enemies. Some enemies will become friends, some friends will become enemies. He will probably not die. And if he does die, he'll be brought back to life. There will be some emotional lows. Some characters we love will die. Some characters we hate will survive. I have high hopes for the story. Cradle isn't something you're going to read because you're looking for something unpredictable. You're looking for some crazy plot twist. Cradle's something you are going to read because you want to see a familiar story, and you want to see the author do some unique twists on these familiar stories. I think a lot of up-and-coming authors could learn a lot from Will White about writing and about story structure. Soulsmith is a very self-contained story. The author presents several questions to the reader in the beginning of Soulsmith. He answers many of those questions, and following the very good climax of this book, in the following action, he introduces and brings to attention several more questions for the reader to keep in mind for the next installment. And that's exactly what he did. He did it in a very masterful way. In a very textbook way, I should say. The entire falling action phase that followed the climax was just done masterfully. It wasn't anything unpredictable, but Will White introduces and brings to mind several questions, several things that the reader should dwell on to be prepared for the next installment of this adventure. So all in all, I enjoyed Soulsmith a little bit more than I enjoyed Unsouled. So I think if Unsouled was like a 7.5 out of 10, then Soulsmith would be like an 8 out of 10. That being said, it's still not knocking me off my feet. It's not blowing my mind, but it's just basics done well. And there's something to appreciate with that. A few questions I have for the next installment, or for later installments in the series. Who is Ethan, or Ethan, or Ethan? I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but what does he have planned? What are his grand designs? He's a very funny character. He's definitely my favorite character in Soulsmith, but I don't trust him. I definitely don't trust him. Who was the Sword Sage, really? And how powerful was he? Everyone knows who he is. So I suspect we're going to learn a lot more about the Sword Sage and Yaren's backstory. We got a little bit of a taste of that in Soulsmith. I'm very much intrigued. That's probably the plot point that I'm most interested in. What is Yaren's backstory and what is the Sword Sage's backstory? So I can't wait to figure out what that is. And finally, will Lindon and Yaren end up being a couple? I definitely ship them. I think it should happen. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, push the little thumbs up icon below. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hear me talk about any other books, or if you just want to follow me along for my reading journey. Push the little notification bell so you can be notified whenever I upload a new video. If you have any book recommendations, leave them in the comments below. I'm very much interested in what you guys are interested in me reading, and I'll see you guys next time.